I never thought I would wear white again. The first time, I was 22. Thomas waited for me at a small church in Savannah, sweating in a rented suit too big for him. We had nothing, a leaking apartment, a car that broke down monthly, and stubborn love that refused to listen to reason. My mother said I was too young. My sister Glenda said I could do better, but I married him anyway, and for 16 years I was right. Thomas died on a Tuesday in March 2009, pancreatic cancer. By the time the doctors found it, there was nothing left to do but count the days. I was 38 years old, with 3 children, a mortgage of $127,000, and a nursing degree that would become my entire life. Kevin was 15, Denise was 12, Patty was only 10. Standing at his grave, holding Patty's hand while she cried into my hip, I made a silent promise. I would not fall apart. I would not let them see me break. I would work double shifts at Memorial Hospital, pay off the house, put them through school, and never ask anyone for help. For 14 years, I did exactly that. 14 years of overtime, of packing lunches at midnight, of pretending I wasn't exhausted when the kids needed me. The nights were hardest. After the dishes were done and tomorrow's lunches were packed, I would sit on the back porch with a glass of cheap wine and stare at the empty chair beside me, the silence where his laugh used to be. The cold side of the bed that never got warm again. The grinding loneliness that doesn't kill you, but doesn't let you live either. When my mother passed in 2019, she left me the beach apartment in Tybee Island, the only thing of value she ever owned, bought with 40 years of savings from her job at the school cafeteria. In that hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and dying flowers, she gripped my hand and made me promise never to sell it. That apartment is your anchor, Olivia, she said, her voice thin as paper. Your grandmother left it to me, and I'm leaving it to you. Never sign anything that takes it away from you. Promise me. I promised. I meant it. By then, Kevin had finished college and moved to Atlanta, working as a junior accountant. Denise was teaching 3rd grade in Macon. Patty was in nursing school, following my footsteps. I had done it. I had raised 3 good children, paid off the house, saved $145,000 for retirement, and never once asked a man to save me. But God, I was tired. So tired that some mornings I couldn't remember why I bothered getting out of bed. Glenda introduced me to Richard in March of this year. She called him a good one, which should have warned me, since my sister's judgment in men was about as reliable as Georgia weather in hurricane season. She had been married twice, divorced twice, and spent most of her energy being bitter about both. Her current husband, Morris, was a quiet man, who seemed to exist mainly to avoid her complaint. But she was my sister, and when she said she had found someone perfect for me, I wanted to believe her. Richard Donovan was 56 years old, a widower, or so he claimed, and a retired sales manager from a medical supply company. He had kind eyes the color of wee coffee, a gentle voice that never raised itself, and the sort of quiet confidence that didn't need to prove anything. He opened doors for me. He pulled out chairs. He listened when I talked, really listened, nodding at the right moments, asking follow-up questions. He remembered small things. That I liked my coffee with 2 sugars and a splash of cream, that magnolias were my favorite flower, that my mother's cat had been named Butterscotch. After 14 years of eating dinner alone, watching television alone, going to bed alone, Richard Donovan felt like oxygen. He's different, I told Denise on the phone one evening in April. He doesn't want anything from me. He just wants to be with me. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear her daughter babbling in the background, the sound of normal life. Mama, she finally said, everyone wants something. But I didn't listen. I was 52 years old, and for the first time since Thomas, I felt like a woman instead of a machine that cooked and cleaned and worked and worried. Richard made me laugh until my stomach hurt. He made me feel seen, noticed, important. When he proposed in July at a little Italian restaurant with candles on the tables and Dean Martin playing softly in the background, I said yes before he even finished the sentence. The ring was beautiful. Princess cut, white gold band, exactly the kind I had described once in a conversation I didn't think he'd been paying attention to. He slipped it on my finger, and his eyes were wet with tears that looked real. Later, much later, I would learn that ring cost $89 from a wholesale jewelry site. A replica so convincing that even the appraiser at the pawn shop had to look twice. But that night, watching it sparkle in the candlelight, I only saw love. Glenda was thrilled. She organized everything. The venue, the flowers, the guest list, the cake I didn't even get to taste before she chose it. You deserve this, she kept saying, hugging me too tight, her perfume overwhelming. After everything you've been through, Olivia, you finally deserve some happiness. Kevin was the only one who didn't come to the ceremony. 2 months before the wedding, Richard took him to lunch. Man to man. When Kevin came back, he stopped calling. Missed Patty's birthday, said he needed space. Your son is an adult, Richard said. He has to learn your life doesn't revolve around him. I should have asked questions, should have driven to Atlanta, but I was so tired of fighting that I let it go. The wedding was small, 40 guests, garden ceremony. Richard cried during his vows, called me the best thing that ever happened to him. The Brennan Heritage Inn had been in my family for 3 generations. My Uncle Harold managed it, a beautiful building in historic Savannah with wrap-around porches and magnolia trees. Harold offered us the honeymoon suite, family rate, which means free. Richard handled the booking, insisted it was the husband's job now. I thought it was sweet. I didn't know he'd checked in the night before under a different name, had already walked those halls with another woman. The suite was perfect. A king bed with canopy, French doors to a balcony, clawfoot tub. Richard carried me across the threshold, and for one night I believed the fairy tale. The next morning I woke alone. His note: "Gone to get breakfast. Don't move." My phone rang at 7:42 a.m. Harold, his voice tight, controlled. "Olivia, come to my office, now, alone. Don't tell Richard." "What's wrong?" A pause. Then something I hadn't heard since my mother's funeral. Pity. "I'm trying to protect you. Please trust me." I got dressed with shaking hands, took the back stairs. Harold's office was in the basement next to security. It smelled like coffee and old carpet. "Sit down," he said. "Just tell me." "Sit down." I sat. He walked to the monitors, pressed buttons. One screen flickered to a recording. "This is from 2 nights ago, before your check-in. Grainy but clear. A hallway, 3rd floor. A man walked into frame. I knew that walk, those shoulders. Richard, not alone. A woman beside him, hand on his arm. Younger, darker hair, confident. They stopped at a door. Not our suite, and she made him laugh. Then they disappeared inside. "There's more," Harold said. He pulled out a folder. Credit card statements, reservation receipts, a form titled Guest Registration Update with my name, waiting for a signature I never gave. "The room was paid with your card, the one you gave him for wedding expenses. The woman is Veronica Sands. She has history. 3 other women in 3 states, all widows." He stopped, swallowed. "One killed herself." I stared at the folder, at the documents, at the smiling face of my husband, frozen on the security monitor, his hand on another woman's back, walking into a room that was paid for with my money on the night before he married me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Richard. "Got croissants. Where did you go, beautiful?" I looked at Harold. He looked at me, and in that moment, something inside me went very, very quiet. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. My hands were steady now. My voice was calm. The woman who had cried at her husband's grave, who had worked double shifts and skipped meals and gave everything she had to everyone else, that woman was still there. But something else was waking up beside her. Something cold. Something patient. "Not yet," I said. "I need to think." I stood up, smoothed my blouse, checked my reflection in the dark screen of a dead monitor. "Olivia." I said not yet. I walked back up the stairs, through the lobby, past the magnolias and the tourists and the life I thought I was building. I walked into our suite, where Richard was setting out breakfast on the little balcony table, where the croissants were warm and the coffee was fresh and the morning sun made everything look like a postcard. "There you are," he said, smiling. I was starting to worry. I smiled back. I kissed his cheek. I sat down across from him and poured myself a cup of coffee with hands that did not shake. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything is perfect," I said. And I began to plan. That night, after Richard fell asleep, I lay in the dark and listened to him breathe, slow, steady breaths, the breaths of a man without conscience, the man I had married 48 hours ago, the man who had made me feel alive again after 14 years of numbness, the man who was stealing everything I had, one signature at a time. I thought about Thomas, about his crooked smile, the way he used to sing off-key in the shower, the last time he told me he loved me. I thought about my mother, small and frail in that hospital bed, making me promise to protect the apartment, the beach apartment in Tybee Island that smelled like salt air in summer, the last piece of her I had left. I thought about Kevin, my son, my firstborn, the boy I had nursed through fevers, driven to baseball practice 1,000 times, the boy who had stopped calling after one lunch with the man sleeping beside me. What had Richard said to him that day? What lies had he planted in my son's mind? What poison had he poured into Kevin's ear to make him miss his own sister's birthday? And then there was Glenda, my own sister, my blood. "He's a good one, Olivia. You deserve this." Did she know? Had she always known? Or was she just a useful fool, jealous enough to push me toward disaster? I turned my head on the pillow and looked at the ring on my finger. $89 of cubic zirconia and broken promises. I didn't take it off, not yet. There would be time for that later. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. Harold had given me the folder, the documents, but there was more. I could feel it. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a plan. Careful, calculated, rehearsed. And plans like that have architects. I closed my eyes and made a new promise. Not to Thomas, who was beyond hearing, not to my mother. This promise was to myself. I would not scream. I would not cry. I would not confront him in a moment of rage and give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would wait. I would watch. I would gather every piece of evidence, and when the time was right, I would take back everything he tried to steal, including my son. Richard murmured something in his sleep, a name, a woman's name, Veronica, and he smiled, a small, satisfied smile. I stared at that smile in the darkness. Then I closed my eyes and began to plan. I spent that first day pretending to enjoy the champagne Richard ordered for lunch, pretending to laugh at his jokes about the waiter's accent, pretending to be the blushing bride taking photos by the fountain in the hotel courtyard, my smile so wide my cheeks ached. Every time he touched my hand, I felt my skin crawl. Every time he called me beautiful or my love, I heard the echo of that name, Veronica, whispered in his sleep. But I smiled, I posed, I played the part. At 3:47 p.m., while Richard napped in our suite, I slipped out and found Harold in his office. He was waiting for me, a fresh pot of coffee on his desk, and the folder from that morning sitting between us like a bomb that hadn't yet exploded. I need to see everything, I said. He nodded slowly. Are you sure? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I've been married to a ghost for 14 years, Harold. I think I can handle seeing the truth about a man I've known for 6 months. He turned to the monitors and pulled up the full recording. The first clip I had already seen, Richard and the woman, Veronica, walking into the room together. But there was more. Timestamps from earlier that evening showed Richard arriving alone, checking in at the front desk under the name David Mitchell. He paid cash. He smiled at the receptionist, the same smile he had given me at our wedding, the same smile that had made me believe I was special. 20 minutes later, Veronica arrived. She walked through the lobby like she owned it, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her dark hair swept over one shoulder. She didn't check in. She went straight to the elevator, punched the button for the 3rd floor, and disappeared. She knew exactly where to go, Harold said. She's been here before. I checked the records. 3 times in the past 4 months, always under different names, always paying cash. My stomach turned. 3 times. The first time was in May, right around the time you and Richard started getting serious. May, the month he told me he loved me for the first time. The month he started talking about a future together, about how lonely he had been since his wife died, about how I had brought light back into his life. All lies, every word. Harold pulled out another set of documents. This is where it gets worse. The folder contained printouts of emails. Emails between Richard and Veronica, recovered from a backup server that Richard didn't know existed. Harold had spent his career investigating fraud before retiring to manage the family hotel. Old habits apparently died hard. The emails were clinical, businesslike. They discussed timelines, targets, exit strategies. They referred to me as the mark. They calculated my assets down to the penny. The beach apartment valued at $485,000, my savings of $145,000, my monthly pension of $3,200. They even knew about the small life insurance policy Thomas had left me, the one I had almost forgotten about. How did they know all this? I whispered. Harold's face was grim. That's what I was afraid you'd ask. He pulled out one more document, a screenshot of a text message conversation. The contact name at the top made my blood run cold. Glenda. She's been feeding them information for months, Harold said quietly. Financial details, your schedule, your habits, the name of your bank, the location of your safe deposit box. Everything. I stared at my sister's name on the screen. Glenda, who had held my hand at Thomas's funeral. Glenda, who had called me every Sunday for 14 years to check on me. Glenda, who had introduced me to Richard with tears in her eyes, saying she just wanted me to be happy. There has to be a mistake. Harold shook his head. I'm sorry, sweetheart, there's no mistake. He scrolled through the messages, dozens of them, dating back to February. Glenda describing my daily routine. Glenda confirming when I would be at work. Glenda reporting that I had agreed to the engagement, that I had signed a form giving Richard access to my credit card for wedding expenses, that I trusted him completely. The last message was from 3 days ago, the morning of my wedding. Glenda, she suspects nothing. The documents are ready. Get her to sign at the hotel. She'll be relaxed, happy. She won't read the fine print. Richard. Perfect. After this one, we can retire. After this one. I was not his first victim. I was meant to be his last. What about Kevin? I asked, my voice hollow. My son. Richard took him to lunch 2 months ago, and Kevin hasn't spoken to me since. What did he tell him? Harold hesitated. I don't have proof of what was said at that lunch, but I found something else. He pulled up another email thread. This one was between Richard and Veronica, dated the day after the lunch with Kevin. Richard, the son is handled, told him his mother is showing early signs of dementia, forgetting things, making bad financial decisions, said I'm trying to protect her assets before she gives everything away to scammers. He believed it. He won't interfere. Veronica, good. The family is always the biggest obstacle. Remove them first. I read the words 3 times before they sank in. Richard had told my son that I was losing my mind, that I couldn't be trusted with my own money, that he, Richard, was the hero trying to protect me from myself. And Kevin, my Kevin, who had always been protective, who had always worried about me being alone, had believed him. He had stepped back, given us space, because he thought he was doing the right thing, because a man he barely knew had poisoned him against his own mother. The rage that had been building inside me since that morning finally found its focus. Not hot, screaming rage, something colder, something patient. There's one more thing, Harold said. About Veronica. He opened a different file on his computer. News articles, court records, police reports from 3 different states. Her real name is Veronica Sands, 44 years old. She's been running this scheme for at least a decade, usually targeting widows between 50 and 65, women with modest assets, no living husbands, often estranged from their families. He paused. 3 confirmed victims that I could find. The first one, a woman in Ohio, lost everything, her house, her savings, her retirement fund. She's living with her daughter now, completely dependent. The second one, in Florida, caught on before they could take everything, but they still got about $80,000. She filed a police report, but Richard and Veronica had already moved on. Different names, different state. And the third, Harold's face aged 10 years in a single breath. Margaret Holloway, 58 years old, widow, school teacher. She met Richard, he was going by Robert then, at a church function in Tennessee. They were engaged within 4 months. By the time she realized what was happening, they had drained her bank accounts, taken a second mortgage on her house, and maxed out 3 credit cards in her name. He stopped, swallowed. She killed herself 6 months later. Pills. Her daughter found her. The room was very quiet. Margaret left a note, Harold continued. She said she couldn't live with the shame. She said she felt stupid, gullible. She said she had worked her whole life, saved everything, and let a man she thought loved her steal it all in less than a year. I thought about Margaret Holloway, a school teacher, a widow. A woman who had probably spent decades grading papers and buying supplies out of her own pocket and dreaming of a retirement she would never see. A woman who had been so broken by what these people did to her that she swallowed a bottle of pills rather than face another day. And I thought about Richard sleeping peacefully upstairs in the honeymoon suite, dreaming of my money. "What do you want to do?" Harold asked. I looked at the folder, at the emails, at my sister's name, burned into the screen like a brand. The documents Richard wants me to sign, the guest registration update. What exactly would they do? Harold pulled out the form. This one creates a joint account with both your names. Once it's established, he can drain it. This other form, he held up a second paper, updates the deed to your beach apartment, adding him as co-owner. Combined with a few forged signatures, he could sell it out from under you within weeks. And if I sign them, you lose everything. The apartment, the savings, probably the house too once he files the other paperwork. He paused. "Olivia, you can't sign these. We need to go to the police." "Not yet." "What do you mean, not yet? This is fraud. This is..." Harold. I looked at him steadily. "If we go to the police now, Richard and Veronica will disappear. They've done it before. New names, new state, new victim. Margaret Holloway's case went nowhere because they were ghosts by the time anyone started looking. So, what do you propose?" I thought about Kevin, who believed I was losing my mind. About Glenda, who had sold me to a predator for reasons I still didn't understand. About Denise and Patty, who would be devastated when they learned what had happened. And I thought about the cocktail Richard had suggested for tomorrow night, a small gathering in the hotel's event room to thank the family and celebrate our new beginning. "Richard wants a party tomorrow," I said slowly. "He wants family, witnesses, a warm atmosphere. He's probably planning to get me to sign those documents there, surrounded by people who would never suspect anything." "Probably. Then we give him his party." I folded my hands in my lap. "But we change the guest list, and we change what gets projected on that screen." Harold stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to smile. "What do you need?" "Everything. Every email, every document, every video clip. And I need you to find out exactly what Glenda knows. Is she a partner or just a useful fool? And Kevin?" My heart ached at his name. My son, my boy. "Kevin gets the truth, but not from Richard's version. From mine." I stood up, smoothing my blouse, checking my reflection in the dead monitor. "Tomorrow night, Harold. Everything comes out tomorrow night." I walked back to the suite where Richard was just waking up from his nap. He smiled when he saw me, that warm, practiced smile that had fooled me for 6 months. "There you are," he said. "I missed you." "I went for a walk," I said, "thinking about tomorrow, the party." "Ah, yes, our celebration." He stretched lazily. "I was thinking we could show some wedding photos, maybe a slideshow, something personal. I have a better idea." I sat on the edge of the bed, close enough to touch him, close enough to smell his cologne. "Let me handle the presentation. I want to surprise you." He raised an eyebrow. "A surprise? I love surprises. I know you do." That night I lay awake again, listening to him breathe. But this time I wasn't grieving. I was planning. Every detail, every word, every moment of tomorrow's reckoning. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Harold. "Found something. Glenda received $15,000 in cash deposits over the past 3 months. No source listed. She knew exactly what she was doing. $15,000. 15. That was the price my sister had put on my life." I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then I closed my eyes and waited for morning. Tomorrow I would get my son back, and tomorrow everyone would see the truth. The hardest part wasn't knowing. The hardest part was pretending I didn't. I woke up on the second morning of my honeymoon next to a man who had called me the Mark in emails I was never supposed to see. He was still asleep, his face soft and innocent in the early light, like a child who had never done anything wrong. I watched him breathe for a long moment, this stranger I had married, and felt nothing but a cold, steady clarity. Today I would smile. Today I would laugh at his jokes and hold his hand and play the part of the happy bride. And tonight, while he slept, Harold and I would finalize every detail of tomorrow's reckoning. Richard stirred, opened his eyes, and smiled when he saw me watching him. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, reaching for my hand. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby," I lied. We had breakfast on the balcony again. Croissants, fresh fruit, coffee that cost more per cup than I used to spend on a week's worth of groceries when the kids were young. Richard talked about the weather, about a boat tour he wanted to take, about how lucky he was to have found me. "You know," he said, buttering his croissant, "I've been thinking." We should probably update some paperwork while we're here. Joint accounts, that sort of thing. Just to make things easier. My heart didn't even skip. I had expected this. What kind of paperwork? Oh, nothing complicated. The hotel has a notary on staff. Harold mentioned it yesterday. We could take care of everything this afternoon, before the party tonight. Harold mentioned it. Of course he did. Richard had no idea that Harold was the one who had shown me the truth. He thought my uncle was just another piece of the puzzle, a convenient resource to legitimize his theft. That sounds sensible, I said, sipping my coffee. What documents did you have in mind? He pulled out a folder from his briefcase, the same folder I had seen in Harold's office, the one with forms designed to strip me of everything I owned. Just some standard stuff, a joint account form, an update to your property records, nothing you need to read too carefully. It's all boilerplate, nothing I need to read too carefully. I thought about Margaret Holloway, the school teacher in Tennessee who had swallowed a bottle of pills, because a man just like Richard had said the same words to her. I thought about the other women, the ones who lost their homes, their savings, their dignity. I thought about how close I had come to being another name in that file. Can we do it tomorrow instead? I asked. I want to focus on the party today, make sure everything is perfect. A flicker of something crossed his face. Impatience, maybe, or frustration, but he covered it quickly with that warm smile. Of course, sweetheart, tomorrow works just as well. I spent the morning wandering the hotel alone, while Richard made phone calls in the suite. Business, he said vaguely. I knew better now. He was probably coordinating with Veronica, making sure their exit strategy was in place. The Brennan Heritage Inn was beautiful in the late morning light. Sunbeams filtered through the tall windows, catching dust motes that floated like tiny stars. The floorboards creaked under my feet, old wood that had supported 3 generations of my family. My grandmother had walked these halls. My mother had played in this courtyard as a child. I found myself in the small chapel at the back of the property, a room that had once been used for Sunday services when the hotel was a private home. It was quiet there, peaceful. Stained glass windows cast colored shadows on the wooden pews. I sat down and closed my eyes. I hadn't prayed in years. After Thomas died, I had stopped believing in a God who would take a good man and leave his children without a father. But sitting there, in the silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not faith, exactly. Something quieter. A sense that I was not alone. I thought about my mother. She had been a practical woman, not given to sentiment or self-pity. When my father left us, I was 12, Glenda was 9. She didn't cry. She got a second job. She made sure we had food on the table and clothes that fit and books for school. She never complained, never asked for help, never let us see her struggle. You can survive anything, she told me once, when I was 16 and heartbroken over some boy whose name I can't even remember now. The only thing you can't survive is giving up. I had carried those words with me through Thomas's death, through 14 years of single motherhood, through every double shift and sleepless night, and I would carry them now. I opened my eyes and looked at the stained glass. A dove, wings spread, light streaming through its feathers. I'm not giving up, Mama, I whispered. Not this time. That afternoon, I did something I had been avoiding for 2 months. I called Kevin. He didn't answer. I hadn't expected him to. But I left a message. Kevin, it's Mom. I know you're angry with me, and I know Richard said some things that made you worry, but I need you to know something. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Whatever he told you about me, it wasn't true. I'm not confused. I'm not making bad decisions. I'm the same woman who raised you, who sat with you through every fever and every heartbreak, who worked double shifts so you could go to college. My voice cracked, but I pushed through. There's something happening tomorrow night at the hotel. A party. I need you to be there, Kevin. Not for Richard, for me, please. Just give me a chance to explain. I hung up before I could say more, before I could beg. Denise and Patty were easier. They had always been suspicious of Richard, had always asked too many questions about where he came from and why he was in such a hurry to get married. When I called and asked them to come to the party, they agreed immediately. Is everything okay, Mama? Denise asked. It will be, I said, after tomorrow. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparations and performances. Richard and I had lunch at a restaurant downtown. We walked along the river, hand in hand, like any newlywed couple. He bought me a bracelet from a street vendor. Cheap silver that would probably turn my wrist green within a week. I thanked him and put it on, adding it to the collection of lies I was wearing. By evening, I was exhausted, not physically, emotionally. The effort of smiling, of laughing, of pretending to love a man I now despised had drained something out of me that I wasn't sure I could get back. Richard suggested we have dinner in the room, just the 2 of us, he said. A quiet night before the big party tomorrow. I agreed because I had no choice. We ate in near silence, or rather, Richard talked and I nodded at appropriate intervals, making sounds of agreement while my mind was elsewhere. After dinner, I excused myself to take a bath. The bathroom in our suite was large and old-fashioned, with a clawfoot tub and brass fixtures that had been polished to a shine. I filled the tub with hot water and lavender bath salts, the same scent my mother had always used, the smell of her skin when she hugged me goodnight, the fragrance that still clung to the pillows in the beach apartment. I sank into the water and finally let myself cry. Not loud, heaving sobs Richard might hear, just quiet tears that slipped down my cheeks and disappeared into the bathwater. Tears for the woman I had been a week ago, naive and hopeful. Tears for the marriage I thought I was building. Tears for my sister, who had betrayed me for $15,000. Tears for my son, who had been manipulated into abandoning his own mother. When the water grew cold, I got out, dried myself, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. I was 52 years old. I had lines around my eyes and gray in my hair and hands that showed every year of hard work. But my eyes were clear. My jaw was set. I looked like a woman who had made a decision. Tomorrow, I would take back my life. Richard was already in bed when I came out of the bathroom. He patted the space beside him. "Come to bed, beautiful. You look tired." I climbed in beside him, keeping a careful distance between our bodies. He didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he didn't care. Within minutes, his breathing had slowed into the rhythm of sleep. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, running through the plan one more time. The party was scheduled for 7 p.m. Harold had arranged for a projector and screen, ostensibly for a slideshow of wedding photos. The real presentation, the emails, the documents, the security footage, was saved on a flash drive in Harold's office. Denise and Patty would be there. Kevin, I hoped, would be there. Even Glenda had confirmed she was coming, probably expecting to witness my financial destruction. She would witness something all right, just not what she expected. My phone buzzed softly. A text from Harold. "Everything is ready. Security will be positioned at the exits. He won't be able to run." I typed back, "What about Veronica?" A pause. Then, "Checked out this morning, probably waiting nearby for the signal. I have someone watching the parking lot." Good. If Veronica showed up, Harold would know, and if she tried to warn Richard, well, it would already be too late. I put down my phone and closed my eyes. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind kept returning to Kevin, to the message I had left, to the silence that had answered it. Would he come? Would he listen? Or had Richard's poison worked too well? At some point, I must have drifted off because I woke to the sound of Richard moving beside me. It was still dark, maybe 3 a.m. He was reaching for his phone, the screen illuminating his face with a pale blue glow. I kept my eyes mostly closed, watching through my lashes. He was reading a text message. His face changed as he read, a slight tightening around the mouth, a narrowing of the eyes. Then he typed something quickly and put the phone away. "Everything okay?" I murmured, pretending to be half asleep. "Just work," he said. "Go back to sleep." But he didn't go back to sleep himself. He lay there in the darkness, very still, very quiet. I could feel tension radiating off him like heat. Something had changed. Had Veronica warned him? Had someone talked? Did he know what was coming? I kept my breathing slow and even, mimicking sleep. While my heart pounded so hard, I was sure he must hear it. Finally, after what felt like hours, he spoke. "Olivia?" I didn't answer. Kept breathing, kept pretending. "I know you're awake." Silence. "Tomorrow is going to be a big day," he said softly. "For both of us." His voice had changed. The warmth was gone. In its place was something flat, something cold. The voice of a man who had stopped pretending. "Sleep well, beautiful. You're going to need your strength." He turned away from me, and within minutes his breathing had steadied again. But I didn't sleep, not for the rest of the night. I lay there in the darkness, listening to the man I had married, and wondered which one of us was walking into a trap. The morning of the party, I woke before dawn. Richard was still sleeping, his face peaceful, his breathing steady. I watched him for a moment. This man I had married, this stranger who had planned to steal everything I had, and felt nothing but cold resolve. Today was the day. I slipped out of bed quietly, dressed in the bathroom, and left a note saying I had gone for an early walk. The hotel was silent at this hour, the lobby empty, except for the night clerk dozing behind the desk. I made my way to Harold's office in the basement, where a light was already burning. He was waiting for me with coffee and a stack of papers. "I didn't sleep either," he said, pushing a cup toward me. "Too much to think about. Is everything ready?" He nodded. "The presentation is loaded. Security knows their positions. The projector has been tested 3 times. He paused. "There's just one thing left to decide. Glenda's messages." Yes. I had been wrestling with this all night. The text messages between my sister and Richard, the ones proving she had fed them information for months, that she had received $15,000 for her betrayal, were damning. Including them in the presentation would expose her completely. Everyone would know what she had done. Our family, our friends, everyone. But leaving them out felt like letting her escape. Like giving her the chance to pretend she was just another victim of Richard's charm. "She's my sister," I said, more to myself than to Harold. "We shared a bedroom for 18 years. She held my hand when Thomas died. She sold you for $15,000 before." The words hung in the air between us. "I know." I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, feeling its warmth. "But if I include those messages, I lose her forever. There's no coming back from that. No Thanksgivings, no Christmases, no phone calls on Sunday. She'll be dead to me, and I'll be dead to her." Harold was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "She made that choice when she took the money, Olivia, not you. I thought about Glenda. About the sister who had taught me to braid my hair, who had covered for me when I snuck out to meet Thomas, who had cried at my wedding and held my babies and been there for every milestone of my life. And I thought about the other Glenda, the one who had looked at my modest savings in my mother's beach apartment and decided they were worth more than my safety, my dignity, my life. Include them," I said, "all of them." Harold nodded slowly. "Are you sure?" "No." I set down the coffee cup. But I'm doing it anyway. Listen, the next step was protecting my assets before Richard could touch them. At 8:30 a.m., I called my bank. I had rehearsed what I would say, keeping my voice calm and professional, giving nothing away. I need to remove an authorized user from my account, Richard Donovan. Yes, immediately. I also need to cancel the credit card ending in 4472, the one I added him to last month. The representative asked security questions. I answered them all correctly. Within 15 minutes, Richard's access to my accounts was gone. He could no longer withdraw money, make purchases, or transfer funds. The financial noose he had been tightening around my neck had been cut. Next, I called my lawyer, a woman I had known since Thomas's death, who had helped me navigate the insurance claims and the mortgage refinancing and all the other paperwork of sudden widowhood. I need to revoke a power of attorney, I said. One I signed 3 weeks ago, giving my husband authority over my financial decisions. Olivia, is everything okay? It will be. Can you file the paperwork today? She could. She did. By 10 a.m., the document that would have allowed Richard to sign away my assets was worthless. Finally, I called the county recorder's office and asked about the deed to my beach apartment, the one in Tybee Island, the one my mother had left me with instructions to never let go. Has anyone filed any changes to the ownership records in the past month? A pause while they checked. Then, no, ma'am, the property is still solely in your name. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. He hadn't gotten to it yet. My mother's legacy was still mine. I returned to the suite at 11 a.m. to find Richard awake and dressed, sitting at the small desk by the window. He was looking at something on his phone, and when he heard me enter, he quickly put it away. "There you are," he said, that familiar warm smile spreading across his face. I was starting to worry. Just went for a walk. Couldn't sleep. Nervous about tonight? A little. I sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining the careful distance I had been keeping since the truth came out. I want everything to be perfect. It will be. He stood and crossed to me, taking my hands in his. His grip was firm, his eyes locked on mine. I've been thinking about the future, Olivia, about us, about all the things we're going to do together. I looked at his face, the kind eyes, the gentle smile, the mask of a loving husband, and felt my stomach turn. "We should talk about those documents," he said. "The ones I mentioned yesterday. It would be good to get them signed before the party. Actually, I already took care of some financial things this morning." Something flickered in his expression, a tightening around the eyes, quickly suppressed. "Oh, what things?" "Just some housekeeping, updating my accounts, that sort of thing." I kept my voice light, casual. I wanted to make sure everything was organized. He was quiet for a moment, studying my face. I could almost see him calculating, trying to determine if I knew something, if I suspected. "That's very responsible of you," he finally said. "But we should still sign the papers I prepared, for both our sakes. Let's do it after the party. I want to focus on our guests today." Another flicker. Frustration this time, barely concealed. "Of course," he said smoothly. "Whatever you prefer." The afternoon passed in a blur of preparations. The event room was transformed into a celebration space. White tablecloths, fresh flowers, a small bar in the corner. Harold had hired staff to serve drinks and appetizers, creating the illusion of a normal, happy gathering. The projector sat in the corner, innocently pointed at the white screen, waiting for its moment. Guests began arriving at 6:30. Denise came first with her husband, Mark. She hugged me tight at the door, whispering in my ear, "I don't know what's going on, Mama, but I'm here, whatever you need." Patty arrived next, alone. Her boyfriend was working, she said, but I suspected she had asked him to stay away. She had always been protective, my youngest. She sensed something was wrong. Then came the extended family. Cousins I hadn't seen in years, old friends from the church, neighbors who had watched my children grow up. They all smiled and congratulated me, shaking Richard's hand, telling us what a beautiful couple we made. Richard played his part perfectly, charming, grateful, humble. He thanked everyone for coming, made jokes about being the luckiest man in the world, kept his arm around my waist like a loving husband should. I smiled until my face ached. At 6:55, Glenda walked in. She was wearing a new dress, expensive, the kind she couldn't normally afford. Her hair was freshly done, her makeup perfect. She looked like a woman who was expecting good news. "Olivia!" She rushed over and hugged me, her perfume overwhelming. "You look beautiful. This is such a wonderful party. Richard, you've outdone yourself." "It was all Olivia's idea," Richard said smoothly. "She wanted to thank everyone for their support." Glenda beamed at me. "I'm so happy for you, sister. You deserve this." I looked at her face, the same face I had known my whole life, the face of the girl who had shared my secrets and my fears and my dreams, and saw nothing but lies. "Thank you, Glenda," I said. "I'm glad you could be here." At 7:10, I began to lose hope about Kevin. I'd checked my phone a dozen times, but there was no response to the message I had left. No text, no call, nothing. My son wasn't coming. Richard's poison had worked too well. The lies he had told Kevin about my mental state, about my supposed dementia, about my inability to make good decisions, they had created a wall between us that my voicemail couldn't break through. I thought about the last time Kevin and I had really talked. It was before Richard came into my life. We had lunch at that little diner near his apartment in Atlanta, the one with the terrible coffee, but the amazing peach cobbler. He had told me about a girl he was seeing, someone from work. He had asked my advice about whether to introduce her to the family. He had looked at me like I was his mother, like my opinion mattered, like I was someone worth listening to. Now he wouldn't even return my calls. I felt Harold's eyes on me from across the room. He gave me a small, sympathetic nod. We had planned for this possibility. The presentation would go forward whether Kevin was there or not, but I had needed my son to see the truth with his own eyes. And then, at 7:15, the door opened. Kevin walked in alone. He was wearing a suit I had never seen before. Charcoal grey, well-fitted, the kind of suit a man wears when he wants to be taken seriously. His hair was neatly combed, his jaw set tight, his face completely unreadable. He stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the room with the careful attention of someone walking into unknown territory. Until his eyes found mine, I couldn't breathe. My heart stopped. The room seemed to narrow to just the two of us. He crossed the room slowly, deliberately, ignoring Richard's extended hand, ignoring Glenda's surprised greeting, ignoring the curious stares of aunts and uncles and cousins, ignoring everyone and everything until he stood directly in front of me. "Mom," he said quietly, "I got your message." "Kevin, I don't know what's happening tonight. I don't understand why you called or what you meant about Richard lying to me, but I'm here because you asked." Tears pricked my eyes, hot and sudden, but I blinked them back. Not yet, not now. I couldn't afford to break down, not when we were so close. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice barely holding steady. "Just stay close and watch. You'll understand everything soon." He nodded once, a single sharp movement, then moved to stand beside Denise and Patty, my 3 children, together for the first time in months. My daughters reached for Kevin's hands, and he let them take them. Whatever happened next, they would see the truth. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't be alone. At 7:30, Harold caught my eye from across the room and gave a small nod. It was time. I walked to the front of the room and picked up the small microphone Harold had set up near the projector. "Everyone, if I could have your attention, please." The room quieted. Faces turned toward me. Richard stood near the bar, a champagne glass in his hand, smiling that warm, loving smile. "Thank you all for coming tonight. This past week has been transformative. I thought I knew what my life would look like. I thought I understood the people around me." I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the room. "I was wrong." A few nervous laughs. Richard's smile flickered. "I asked you here tonight because I believe in truth, and I believe that the people who love me deserve to know the truth about the man I married." I pressed the button on the remote in my hand. The screen lit up with the first image. A security camera still of Richard and Veronica walking into the hotel room together. The room went silent. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is my husband. And this is the woman he spent the night with, in this hotel, the night before our wedding." Richard's champagne glass shattered on the floor. The champagne glass shattered, and for a moment no one moved. Richard stood frozen by the bar, his face drained of color, his eyes fixed on the screen where his own image stared back at him. Walking into a hotel room with another woman, the timestamp clearly visible in the corner. September 14, 2023, 9:47 p.m., the night before our wedding. "That's not," he started, but I pressed the button again. The next slide appeared, the email thread between Richard and Veronica, the one where they discussed timelines and targets, the one where they called me the Mark. I read it aloud, my voice steady and clear. "The widow is perfect, modest assets, but enough to make it worthwhile. No husband, estranged son, trusting nature. She'll sign anything we put in front of her." I looked at Richard. "That's you, isn't it? Writing about me like I was a piece of merchandise." The room had gone completely silent. I could hear someone's sharp intake of breath. Denise, maybe, or Patty. I could feel Kevin's eyes on me, burning with something I couldn't quite identify. Richard took a step toward me, his hands raised. "Olivia, sweetheart, this is a misunderstanding. Those emails were taken out of context. That woman is just a business associate. I can explain. Can you explain this?" I pressed the button again. The screen filled with financial documents, the joint account form, the property deed update, the papers designed to strip me of everything I owned. "These are the documents you wanted me to sign today. This one," I pointed to the first form, "would have given you access to my savings, all $145,000 of it. And this one," I pointed to the second, "would have added your name to the deed of my mother's beach apartment, the apartment she made me promise to never give away." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw my cousin Margaret cover her mouth with her hand. I saw old Mr. Patterson from the church shake his head in disbelief. "And this," I continued, pressing the button once more, "is the woman you've been working with." Veronica's face filled the screen, a mugshot from her arrest in Florida 3 years ago, followed by news articles about her previous victims. "Her name is Veronica Sands. She's a professional con artist who targets widows. 3 confirmed victims before me. The first one lost everything: her house, her retirement, her dignity. The second one caught in early, but still lost $80,000. I paused, letting the words sink in. The third one, Margaret Holloway, a schoolteacher from Tennessee, killed herself 6 months after they destroyed her. Someone gasped. I think it was Glenda. "You were going to do the same thing to me. You and Veronica had it all planned out. The romance, the quick engagement, the wedding at my family's hotel, where you thought no one would be watching." I smiled, cold and sharp. "You didn't count on my Uncle Harold. 30 years as a fraud investigator before he retired. He saw you on the security cameras the night before our wedding. He saw everything." Richard's mask finally cracked. "This is insane," he snarled, all pretense of warmth gone. "You're a crazy woman making up stories. I'll sue you for defamation. You'll what?" I took a step toward him. "Run. That's what you usually do, isn't it? New name, new state, new victim. But not this time, Richard. This time there are 50 witnesses watching you. This time the exits are covered." As if on cue, 2 security guards stepped into view, blocking the main doors. Harold had positioned them perfectly. Richard's eyes darted around the room, calculating escape routes, finding none. For the first time since I had known him, he looked afraid, but I wasn't finished. "There's one more thing," I said. "One more person who helped you get to me." I pressed the button. Glenda's text messages appeared on the screen. The room seemed to contract around my sister. I watched her face as she recognized the words. Her words sent to Richard over months, detailing my finances, my schedule, my trust. "She suspects nothing," I read aloud. "The documents are ready. Get her to sign at the hotel. She'll be relaxed, happy. She won't read the fine print." Glenda had gone white as chalk, and in exchange for selling out your own sister, I continued, my voice like ice, "you received $15,000 in cash deposits over the past 3 months. Did you think I wouldn't find out, Glenda? Did you think Harold wouldn't notice the money trail?" "Olivia," Glenda's voice was barely a whisper, "I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you introduced me to a con man? Can you explain why you gave him every detail of my life? Can you explain why my son stopped talking to me after Richard told him I was losing my mind? A lie you probably helped craft?" Kevin made a sound beside me, something between a gasp and a groan. I turned to look at him, and what I saw in his face broke my heart and healed it at the same time. He understood. Finally, he understood. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "I didn't know. He told me you were showing signs of dementia, that you were making bad decisions, that he was trying to protect you. I believed him." He stopped, unable to continue. "I know, baby." I reached out and took his hand. "That's what they do. They isolate the victim from family first. Make them seem crazy so no one believes them when they finally figure out what's happening." "I'm so sorry." Tears were streaming down Kevin's face now. "I should have come to you. I should have asked you directly. I should have—" "You're here now. That's what matters." Denise and Patty had moved to stand on either side of us, forming a wall of family around me. My children, my protectors. Whatever happened next, I wasn't facing it alone. Richard watched this reunion with something like disgust on his face. "This is pathetic," he spat. "A bunch of emotional women playing detective. You have no proof of anything. Security footage can be faked. Emails can be fabricated. I'll have my lawyers tear this apart." "Will you?" I pressed the button one final time. The screen showed a photograph, Richard and Veronica together, taken just 2 days ago in the hotel parking lot. They were standing close, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing. The timestamp was unmistakable. "Your business associate was here yesterday, Richard. She checked out this morning, probably to wait nearby while you finish the job. But Harold had someone watching the parking lot." I tilted my head. "I wonder what she'll say when the police ask her about Margaret Holloway. I wonder if she'll cut a deal and testify against you to save herself." The color drained from Richard's face completely, and then, as if the universe had decided to deliver one final piece of evidence, his phone rang. The screen lit up with the name everyone in the room could see. V. Plan B. Richard scrambled to silence it, but it was too late. 50 pairs of eyes had seen the caller ID. 50 witnesses had watched him fumble with his phone like a guilty man. "Plan B," I said softly. "I wonder what that was. Probably the backup escape route, right? The one you use when things go wrong." I shook my head. "Things have definitely gone wrong, Richard." For a long moment no one moved. The room was suspended in a terrible silence, the weight of truth pressing down on everyone present. Then Glenda collapsed. It wasn't dramatic, no screaming, no wailing. She simply crumpled, her legs giving out beneath her, her expensive new dress pooling around her on the floor. Someone rushed to help her, one of my cousins, I think, but I didn't move. I couldn't feel sorry for her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Richard tried to run. He bolted for the side door, the one that led to the kitchen, but the security guard was faster. A hand clamped down on Richard's shoulder, spinning him around. "Mr. Donovan," the guard said calmly, "the police are on their way. I suggest you stay where you are." Richard struggled for a moment, then went still. All the fight had gone out of him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, like a balloon slowly deflating. I walked toward him, stopping just a few feet away. Close enough to see the fear in his eyes, close enough to see the man behind the mask, petty, desperate, cruel. "I want you to remember something," I said quietly, so only he could hear. "I'm not Margaret Holloway. I'm not any of those other women you destroyed. I survived you, and now everyone knows exactly what you are." He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. I turned my back on him and walked toward my children. Kevin wrapped his arms around me first, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. Then Denise joined, then Patty, and for a moment we just stood there, the 4 of us, together, whole. "I'm sorry, Mom," Kevin whispered again. "I'm so sorry I doubted you." "Shh." I stroked his hair like I used to when he was small. "We're going to be okay. All of us." Behind me, I could hear the sound of sirens approaching. The police arrived 12 minutes later. They took Richard into custody, along with statements from Harold and me and a flash drive containing every piece of evidence. I watched them put handcuffs on him. This man I had married, this man who had kissed me and told me I was beautiful while planning to steal everything I owned. He didn't look at me as they led him away. I was glad. Veronica was picked up 3 hours later at a motel 20 miles away, waiting with 2 packed suitcases, $8,000 in cash, and a fake passport. When they searched her room, they found documents related to 5 other potential victims. Women she and Richard had been researching, widows who had no idea how close they had come to destruction. Glenda was taken home by her husband Morris, who had stood frozen during the entire presentation. He hadn't known anything about her involvement. That much was clear from the shock in his eyes. He looked like a man watching his life collapse. I didn't say goodbye to her, maybe not ever. By midnight, the event room was empty, except for my children and Harold. What happens now? Denise asked quietly. Now we wait, Harold said. The police will build their case. It could take months before it's sorted out. Kevin hadn't let go of my hand since the police left. Mom, he said, I need to tell you something. That day Richard took me to lunch. He showed me fake bank statements that made it look like you were giving money to strangers online. He said you'd fallen for a scam. He said he was trying to protect you, but you kept refusing. My heart ached. He was convincing, Kevin continued. I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was believing my mother had chosen a con man over her family. I thought if I gave you space, you'd eventually see the truth. He knew which buttons to push, I said. You're here now. That's what matters. Denise leaned on my shoulder. I never liked him. Something about his eyes. They never matched his smile. You were right. No, Patty said. You were lonely, Mom. You deserved someone. He just wasn't someone. He was a monster wearing a human mask. I thought about Richard's warm smile, about feeling seen after 14 years of invisibility. He had been good at what he did, professional. I'm not bitter, I said. I thought I would be. But sitting here with all of you, I feel like I woke up. Like I was sleepwalking through a nightmare, and now I'm finally awake. Harold stood. It's late. There'll be plenty to deal with tomorrow. Tonight I packed my bags. I removed the cheap ring, $89 of lies, and left it on the nightstand. And I stood with my 3 children, feeling something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Free. 3 weeks after the party, I stood on the porch of my mother's beach apartment in Tybee Island, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic. The air smelled of salt and seaweed and something else. Something clean, like the world had been washed overnight and was starting fresh. I wrapped my hands around a mug of coffee and let the warmth seep into my fingers, into my bones, into the parts of me that had been cold for so long I had forgotten what warmth felt like. I was alone, but not lonely. There's a difference, I had learned. Loneliness is an ache, an absence, a hunger that can't be filled. Solitude is a choice, a gift you give yourself when you finally understand that your own company is enough. Behind me, the apartment was quiet, the same furniture my mother had chosen 30 years ago, the same photographs on the walls, me as a child, my children as babies, Thomas on our wedding day, with that crooked smile I still missed, the same lavender sachets in the closets, faded now, but still faintly fragrant. Nothing had changed here, and everything had changed in me. Richard was in jail awaiting trial. The charges had multiplied in the weeks since his arrest. Fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy. The FBI had gotten involved once they realized the scope of his operation. 3 states, at least 7 victims, over $400,000 stolen across a decade of careful, patient crime. Veronica had turned on him, just as I predicted. Faced with the evidence Harold had compiled and the prospect of spending the rest of her 40s in federal prison, she had made a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. She would testify against Richard, provide documentation of their partnership, name other accomplices they had worked with over the years. The prosecutor called me 2 days ago. She said Richard's lawyer was trying to negotiate a plea deal. 15 to 20 years, with the possibility of parole after 10. She asked if I had any objections. I thought about Margaret Holloway, the schoolteacher who had swallowed a bottle of pills. I thought about the other women, the ones who had lost their homes and their dignity and their faith in human kindness. I thought about what Richard had tried to do to me. No objections, I said, but make sure he serves every day he's sentenced, every single day. She promised she would do her best. The annulment had been finalized a week ago. My lawyer had expedited the paperwork, citing fraud as grounds for dissolving the marriage. In the eyes of the law, Richard Donovan had never been my husband. The marriage certificate was void. The vows were meaningless. The whole elaborate performance had been erased, as if it had never happened. I kept the ring, though. The cheap one, the $89 replica he had passed off as a symbol of eternal love. I kept it in a small box in my dresser drawer, not as a memento, but as a reminder. A reminder of how close I had come. A reminder to trust my instincts. A reminder that the people who want to hurt you don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like second chances. Kevin had moved back to Savannah. He had given notice at his job in Atlanta and found a position with an accounting firm downtown, close enough to visit me on weekends, close enough to make up for the months he had spent believing Richard's lies. You don't have to do this, I told him when he announced his plans. I don't need you to uproot your life for me. I'm not doing it for you, he said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. I'm doing it for me. I miss too much time with my family. I don't want to miss any more. He came to dinner every Sunday now. Sometimes Denise and Mark joined us, driving up from Macon with the kids. Sometimes Patty brought her boyfriend, a quiet young man named James, who looked at her like she hung the moon. We crowded around my dining room table. Too many people for the space. Too much food for the plates. Too much laughter for the walls to contain. It was everything I had wanted. Everything I had almost lost. Glenda had called 3 times since the party. I hadn't answered. The first time, 2 days after Richard's arrest, she left a voicemail. Her voice was shaky, tearful, barely recognizable as the sister I had known my whole life. "Olivia, please, I need to explain. I didn't know. I didn't understand what he was going to do. He told me it was just a business arrangement, that no one would get hurt. Please, just let me explain." I deleted the message without listening to the rest. The second time, a week later, she sent a text. 3 paragraphs of excuses and justifications, ending with the words, "You're my sister. You have to forgive me. That's what family does." I didn't respond. The third time was yesterday. She called while I was sitting on this same porch, watching the waves, thinking about nothing and everything. I saw her name on the screen and felt something twist in my chest. Not anger, not grief, but something more complicated. Something I didn't have a name for yet. I let it go to voicemail. This morning I finally listened to what she said. "Olivia." Her voice was different now. Quieter, heavier. "I'm not going to ask you to forgive me again. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that Morris left. He couldn't look at me anymore, not after what came out at the party. He said he didn't know who I was." A long pause. "I don't know who I am either. I've been asking myself why I did it, and the only answer I can find is that I was jealous. Jealous of your life, your children, your strength. You always had everything together, Olivia. Even when Thomas died, even when things were hard, you never fell apart. And I hated you for it. I hated you for being strong when I felt so weak." Another pause. I could hear her breathing, ragged and wet. "That's not an excuse. I know that. There is no excuse for what I did. I just wanted you to understand. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not because I expect you to forgive me, just because it's true. I'm sorry, Olivia, for everything." The message ended. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time, staring at the waves,